Hey guys, so today I'm here with a review of the Game Boy Advance SP. Now the Game Boy Advance SP was a marginal upgrade from the original Game Boy Advance. Of course they do play the same games, they support all the same sorts of things. The main difference however was that the Game Boy Advance SP had a lot of key improvements. Namely the fact that it did have a flip-out screen with protected controls. It also did have, it was fairly, well, it was not fairly, it was quite a bit smaller as you can see here. But it also did have two other major things, namely the fact that it did have a backlit screen, which was a huge help, in addition to the fact that it does take rechargeable batteries. So all of this really conspired to make the Game Boy Advance SP a really great console. So I'm going to go ahead and just break down exactly why. As you can see here, the Game Boy Advance SP was a definite departure from previous Game Boy design. With the folding clamshell design, with the backlit screen, with all the different improvements that they made. In fact, very similar to what they did with the Nintendo DS. And indeed the 3DS as well. They had very similar designs, although of course the DS wasn't identical, but you can definitely see the similarities. So let's go ahead and just give you guys a little walkthrough of the SP here. Top, not a whole lot, made out of that same sort of Game Boy plastic. See here, mine's scratched up just a little bit, but considering I played this thing like every day for like 3 or 4 years, I kind of expect that. Over here you do have two indicator lights for when it's on, one's for the battery, so it'll either be green or orange depending on how the battery is, and then the other one will just go ahead and show you if the battery is charging or not. Over here we do have the on-off switch, and over here we can go ahead and pull out the Game Boy game. Now this is where you go ahead and insert the game card. It does support Game Boy Advance games as well as Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, although the older games do protrude out a little bit, but not a big deal. Coming around here, you'll see that there's a volume slider. Again, there's a first for a Game Boy. However, one thing that you will definitely notice is missing is a 3.5mm audio jack. So no way to plug in headphones to the Game Boy Advance SP, which was one of the only real downsides to the console. Coming around on the back, you'll see, and go ahead and just flip it over this way. You'll see a very small left and L and R triggers. They weren't the greatest, but most Game Boy games weren't really relying on it, so it wasn't the biggest deal. You do have a couple of places for accessories to mount, and then go ahead and flip it back over here. You'll see that this is where you plug in the charger, and this is where you go ahead and plug in the link cable. Not a whole lot on the back. You just go ahead. This is where the rechargeable battery is. It's pretty simple. You just need to go ahead and undo one screw to get at it. Let's go ahead and open it up. You'll see here it's got a nice size screen, definitely a very nice size screen. It was very good. In fact, I'll go ahead and light up for you. As you can see here, the back light, go ahead and turn it on and off. It does work fairly well. Go ahead and down here we do have a light that does enable and disable the backlight. And in newer versions of the SP, now there's really no easy way to tell immediately. I do have one of the older versions, but this would actually go ahead and go through different mode selectors as far as on the screen. And lastly, we do have the directional D-pad, the A and B buttons, the start and select, and finally the speaker. As you can tell, the Game Boy Advance SP was more of an evolution than a revolution. Now, of course, it did bring a lot of really important enhancements, namely that screen, the really nice folding design. As you can see here, it's a bit chunky by today's standards, but it does fit nicely in your hand, easily fits in a pocket, no problem. However, the rechargeable battery, the folding design, and the backlit screen really were the hallmarks of why you want to buy a Game Boy Advance SP over the original Game Boy Advance. Everything else, like I've said, still applies, although you do lose out on that 3.5mm audio jack. But for Game Boy games, there's very rarely, the music not really going to be good enough that you're going to want to listen to on headphones. However, it was kind of a bit annoying that they removed it. So there you go, guys. That's about it. There's not a whole lot to say about the Game Boy Advance SP that hasn't already been said. Personally, it remains to be one of my favorite consoles ever. I've played this thing to death. It's just such a great console. The Game Boy Advance in general has so many great games. It just was really great to be able to play in the dark. You don't have to worry about buying, 2, 3, 4 sets of rechargeable batteries a week, if you really want to start playing through a game. There's so many great things about the Game Boy Advance SP that I have no problems whatsoever in recommending this to you as probably the best way to play any Game Boy game ever made. Now, there's not a whole lot to look out for on these. You can go ahead, obviously, for the standard, wear and tear. This one's not perfect, but I've used it a lot. One thing you do want to pay attention to is the rechargeable battery. See how long it lasts. Now, I will say that the rechargeable batteries were pretty robust on these. I've used this one, like I said, I got this one back in 2003, and I'm still on the original battery. Of course, it doesn't last all that long, maybe about 45 minutes per charge. Still, that's very impressive considering the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours I've logged on this. So, you can go ahead and pick up replacement batteries. They aren't too hard to find, and they're not all that expensive. But definitely do keep that in mind if you're going to go ahead and pick one of these up. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot to worry about. The Game Boy Advance SP is a very, very solid console.